My name is Alisa Vitti. I'm the founder of HelloLiving.com and the author of a book called Woman Code. And a little bit about what we do. We are the world's first and only online hormonal improvement platform for women. We take care of thousands of women in 36 countries. It's been a really exciting journey over the past 12 years of taking this process from a clinical practice as an integrated nutritionist to now the CEO of a mobile healthcare technology company. So that's really kind of fun. What I want to talk to you today about, of course, has a little to do with hormones, so don't be alarmed. Because I know that oftentimes when we hear the word hormones, we think that it's a liability. How many of you feel that way? That your hormones kind of run you in the wrong direction? Yeah, not surprising. But I'm here to teach you today the neurochemistry of why the hormonal changes in your brain chemistry are actually an asset. I'm going to teach you the science of how that works and the applications so that you can be more efficient in your careers and more successful in all of the things that you're doing, but with less stress on your body. Why am I so passionate about this? Because there is a silent and growing epidemic that's happening currently in the world of women's health, right? We have 75% of you sitting in this room struggling with hormonal issues right now. We have $200 billion in the workplace being lost annually just due to cramps. We have 40 million women struggling with PMS, 5 million of which need to be hospitalized. 1 out of 20 couples are infertile, 1 out of 10 women suffer with endometriosis, 1 out of 2 women struggle with thyroid issues. It's a big deal. And we're being taken out of the game of our sort of most successful flow because these issues are really plaguing us in a chronic, consistent, predictable way. The other reason why I'm so passionate about it is because I myself was in this situation. So 17 years ago, I was obese, covered in acne, having all sorts of complete hormonal endocrine breakdown, was told by my doctors at the time that I would never be able to conceive. All those things, never sort of have sort of a normal health process. And I was a student at Johns Hopkins at the time, and really got interested in the research that was coming out of the Human Genome Project around epigenetics and how we could use micronutrient therapy to manipulate gene expression. And I thought, well, why can't we use micronutrient therapy to manipulate endocrine gland function? So that's what the protocol that I described in Woman Code is based on. But before I get into the biochemistry of your brain, I want to make a pit stop at physics, a little physics lesson. And if I hadn't mentioned that I'm a huge science geek, it's going to be obvious shortly, okay? So, first and foremost, when we think about success, right, an unconscious definition that you might be working with is this idea of going from point A to point B in the least amount of time, right? Success, okay? From a physics definition, we're talking about force over distance. So I want to give you 2 little examples to keep in mind, because this will really help when we get into the brain chemistry part. So let's imagine an object sliding across the floor, like a hockey puck, something like that, from point A to point B. We're going to call this push technology. Okay, not the kind of push technology I'll be doing next week, but push technology. So, yeah, push technology sliding across the floor. Now, what's interesting about this is you will get from point A to point B. It'll take you a little bit longer. There's a high degree of friction here, okay? Let's counterpose that with a different kind of technology. So let's imagine same distance between point A and point B, and now instead of pushing a hockey puck, we're watching a wheel, like a bicycle wheel, rotate across the same distance. Interesting, we're going to call that cyclical technology. So now we're getting from point A to point B faster, and in fact, in the same time that it would take the hockey puck to reach point B, your wheel has even pushed beyond point B. So there's a low degree of friction, less time, and obviously when we compare these 2 forms of technology against this idea of success, right, there's one technology that's superior, which is the cyclical technology. What if I told you that your neurochemistry, because of your unique female hormones, operates on a cyclical technology basis? You would kind of want to start leveraging that, right?
because you can get more done in less time with less friction, less stress on your body. So let's go into the biochemistry a little bit. I'm going to talk to you about the science. I'm going to give you a little research, and then we're going to talk about the application. So you have 4 distinct neurochemical patterns that exist in a 30-day period. The first one is categorized by moderate FSH, moderate estrogen, okay? These concentrations of hormones rise in your brain chemistry, change your brain, actually. Everyone's brain is affected by hormones, but women's brains change up to 25% per month due to these hormonal fluctuations. So it's really exciting to be able to play with the differences. This will apply, well, I will answer that question, but yes. Second hormonal pattern is elevated estrogen, elevated follicular stimulating hormone, and elevated testosterone. So that's pattern number 2. Pattern number 3 is moderate estrogen, peak progesterone, moderate testosterone. And pattern number 4 is low levels of all of those hormones. Now, that's scientific, biological, biochemical reality in your body. What we've been discovering in the research, the NIH has published studies on this, my colleagues, Luann Brizendine, Dr. Daniel Amen, who has his brain clinic, we've been looking at the regions of the brain that get stimulated by this particular set of hormonal ratios. So I want to break down what's being stimulated and then how you can use that to your benefit. So in the first phase, with that moderate estrogen, moderate FSH, what's being stimulated is actually the executive functioning of the brain, okay? So just make a note, executive functioning of the brain. Second category, second stage, where we have elevated estrogen, elevated FSH, elevated testosterone. What's being stimulated in your brain are your verbal and social centers of the brain. Third category, where we have moderate estrogen, moderate testosterone, elevated progesterone. What's being stimulated here is the detailed, data-driven part of the brain, okay, more the left brain. And then in the final stage, where all these hormonal levels come down to stasis, the right and left hemisphere have maximum capacity to communicate across the corpus callosum, the bundle of nerve fibers that connect the 2 hemispheres, which helps you evaluate and analyze things. Okay, that's what that allows you to do. So now, how can you start to plug this into your life, to your job, to your career in a way that makes you more efficient, right? Because when we're defining success, we're talking about the least amount of friction to get you from point A to point B, which are your goals, with the least amount of stress on your body. Because how many of you feel like you work your butts off and it's draining your health? Okay, yeah, everybody. So this is a way out of that. This is about a paradigm shift. We're talking about redefining how you as a woman can leverage this unique cyclical technology that you have encoded into you to be more successful, more efficient with less friction on your health. So the application is really straightforward. When the prefrontal cortex, when the executive functioning of the brain is being stimulated in that first phase, this is the time to project plan. This is the time to do your Gantt chart or go on base camp or do whatever you're doing. Okay, map out your intentions, your goals for the month. Because your brain, that center of the brain is being stimulated at that time, you're naturally better at this task and you find it more easily pleasurable to complete, which is why we would want to lean into that activity, prioritize that activity. Second week, okay, we're talking about social and verbal centers of the brain. So this is a time to negotiate, ask for a raise, vet new candidates to hire, brainstorm with your team, do highly collaborative things, give public speeches, do whatever that allows you to be creative in the social and verbal kind of way. In the third week, we have this idea of the detail orientation, right? So how many of you feel like you just have these ongoing, never-ending projects that never get completed? You're just always working on them. This is a very good opportunity for you to really lean into this neurochemical pattern and bring something to completion. It's going to make you feel so good. It's progesterone, which is why, for example, when you're pregnant, which I am right now, people are like, how is it that you've gotten so much done this pregnancy? It's because when you're pregnant, you have the most amount of progesterone you could possibly have at any given point in your life. And so your ability to bring things to completion is pretty high. So I just wrote and finished 2 book proposals and launched an app and, redecorated the apartment. Progesterone lets you do that. It's great. Okay, so that's the 3rd stage. And then in the 4th stage, where the hormonal levels have shifted your brain chemistry to stasis, now we're talking about evaluation and analysis. So at work, what does this look like? This means it's time to run some reports, look at performance evaluation, see how you're doing compared to the goals that you've set at the beginning of the month, right? And when you think about this whole process in aggregate, right, in the meta, right, where you get to kind of look at all the ways in which you're working across the month, you get to do more over a 30-day period with less strain and stress, right? How many of you feel like you're supposed to be project planning, team building and collaborating, evaluating, completing data, all of that every single day? All the time, right? You're supposed to be running all 4 of those cylinders simultaneously. And we know that multitasking to that degree causes brain damage. We have plenty of research on that. So it's really excellent if you can start to lean into these different patterns, because it will just make you more efficient. And I would love to see a world where women are really leveraging the natural brain chemistry that they have so that they can really start to succeed more easily in their careers, and also not view what's happening in their bodies as a liability, because it's really a gift. It's really a gift. So I have a few minutes for questions, and for those lucky few of you who asked the first 3 questions, I have a book to give.
Thank you. Hi, congratulations. And so I have a question about teams, and how do you apply this to teams and your company?
Yeah.
When you're in a company where there's a lot of things going on, you constantly have to project manage and get things done, and it's not always so perfectly.
Right.
We do this every week, and we don't do any kind of project management on these days.
Right.
So how do you apply this to teams and companies?
Love that question. So I have a company and a team, and right now it's 75% female, so there's a lot of different hormonal patterns going on. The way you work it in a team is twofold. One, you operate your own neurochemical pattern and work with that for yourself. So that, again, even if you're just doing 50% of a priority shift within this new architecture where you're front-loading certain tasks that lean into that neurochemical pattern, you're going to just be more efficient. You're going to actually have more time to give to your team, right? So first, it's about self-management. And then what I have found in my experience is we give the company its own architecture. So the first week of the month, we assume that it's in that sort of phase of project planning. So everyone can kind of, wherever they are, plug that information into that week. So you may be ahead of schedule, for example. Let's say you're in your 3rd phase, but the company's in its 1st phase. That's fine. You've already done phase 1 project planning, and you can just deliver that at that week to the team. So it's pretty easy to do. It's not about trying to sync everybody up hormonally and neurochemically. It's about first prioritize your own set of projects against this neural map, and then have it ready to go when the company has need for it at that time. Does that make sense? Really easy, not complicated. Oh, we'll get you your book after. Okay, yes, yes.
My question is, I asked you before about menopausal women, because is this for us too?
Yes, ma'am.
And secondly, if you're an entrepreneur, you gotta multitask. How can you not be doing everything?
Well, let me address that first. As an entrepreneur for the past 12 years, I will tell you, multitasking gets you nowhere fast. And I think many of you would know that from experience. You have to prioritize somewhere so that you can bring things to completion. For example, you can only work on one project if you're a solopreneur at a time in a given month. So that month, you would really want to map out, how am I going to go from point A to point B to total completion, so I can really evaluate whether or not it's worth my efforts to continue doing this particular idea, right? So that's the first thing. As far as we're talking about menopause, so there's another hormonal pattern, right, where we have continuously elevated FSH levels, stable estrogen, testosterone, progesterone. It's actually a fantastic hormonal pattern to have. So basically what you have access to is that you can kind of choose which center of the brain you'd like to focus in on, because they're kind of all being lit up simultaneously. So postmenopausal women have kind of a wonderful opportunity to really be even more well-practiced in prioritizing. So again, the idea is not to try to do everything at once, but recognize that because you have this elevated FSH, for example, your verbal skills are going to be, your communication is going to be your strongest suit, right? You're never going to not say what you're feeling and how you want things to go. But then also because you have stable levels of estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, you're really going to be able to bring things to completion very easily, delegate projects. All of that stuff is at your fingertips in a way that those of us who are still in our cyclical years have to kind of, plan out week over week.
So great, lots of great insights, but how do we know where we are in our cycle so we can start taking advantage of this?
Amen, sister. Read the book for sure. Okay, there's a chart in chapter 5 that maps out where you are, how to look for physical cues to let you know exactly where you are hormonally and neurochemically. Certainly, get all of our free resources on flowliving.com. And of course, this goes without saying, if I didn't mention it before, in order for you to fully take advantage of this neurochemistry, you do have to address your underlying hormonal imbalances. Because if you're dealing with PMS, for example, that progesterone level in the 3rd week, right, is not going to be elevated enough for you to actually get things done. Instead, you're going to be estrogen dominant, you're going to feel anxious, depressed, fatigued. So that idea that I gave you, the sort of architecture, that is what's normal and possible if you're healthy. If you're imbalanced hormonally, first step is to address that. We have tools on the site that you can do that for, but then move into utilizing this new framework to achieve more. I think that's all the time we have for questions, but I'll be around to answer more. And those 3 brave souls who asked a question, come get your book. Thank you guys so much.